If you're an experienced dieter, you know that carbs cause water retention, protein doesn't. Let me break that down to you in weight loss terms, what that looks like. Pound for pound, calorie for calorie, protein and carbs are gonna be pretty much the same. But for every gram of carb that you intake, you're retaining 4 to 5 times its weight in water. It's the only macronutrient that does that. So that's why it's very easy to target and point the finger and point blame at carbs, because if we put that in scale terminology, that means that for every 100 grams of carbs, that's close to a pound. Over the course of the week, 500 extra carbs, 4 to 5 extra pounds on the scale. If you go on a low carb diet and it happens to reduce your carbs by 4 to 500 over the course of the week, same thing. You're seeing that 4 to 5 pound drop on the scale. That feels pretty magical. So that's one of the reasons why there's kind of this love-hate thing with carbs, because you don't get that with any other macronutrient. You typically only see that spike with carbs. And so when you cut carbs, your body taps into those like extra glycogen stores that it brought in from you eating the carbs, and it releases that stored water. And that's why we see that rapid drop in weight. The main thing to remember is that water weight from having the extra high carb days aren't real. You know, they were just some abnormal days. And when you go back to eating normally, the extra water weight is going to slowly dissipate as you start like moving and acting in ways that tap into those glucose stores, plus because you're back to normal again. So it'll release some of that. But the thing is that that's also what happens on the flip side. When you lose all of that weight from your body, like tapping into like glycogen stores on stores on stores, because of the fact that you keep releasing water from dropping those carbs, it's just waiting for the day that you add more carbs to your system so that it can replenish those stores that it tapped into. And then because of that, like I said, mentally, we start making these connections, and weight loss is 90% mindset. It's about these connections, these mental connections that you make. And so when you're making those bigger connections and thinking like, oh my gosh, as soon as I added carbs back, I gained all the weight. It's carbs' fault. No, it's not carbs' fault. You just tapped into your reserve. So it's just like you drained your bank account and you're in the negative. And then so when you add money back into it, it's going to take a minute before you're back to where you need to be. It doesn't mean like, oh, I shouldn't add money to that account, although a lot of people do that. You want to get it back up to where it should be before things start being normal again. So that's why I typically see this happening even more in women over 40, because you've had so many experiences with high carb days causing that like bloated, you know, stuffed sausage feeling. And you've had so many experiences with those low carb days and things kind of like flushing out and feeling like, oh, this feels amazing. And while sure, you may want to use those to do whatever you need to do for a very quick event or something like that. But the key is that if you're doing it, you have to remember that that was a quick fix and that it's going to come back. And unless you're somebody who's ready to give up carbs forever and just always walk around in that depleted state, then that's going to be something that's always haunting you and looking over your shoulder. You're always going to be scared of the day that you add carbs back, instead of getting okay with the point of having enough carbs in your system, having enough of that glucose there because you need it for your workouts, having enough water in your muscles because you need them, because muscles without water is jerky. So you want to have a good amount of water in the system. So the real issue is never the carbs themselves, it's how they fit into the bigger picture. So when we're talking about do low carb diets work for fat loss, the research shows that when everything is the same, when calories are the same, the results are the same. So if calories and protein are the same in a medium carb diet or a high carb diet as they are in a low carb diet, the low carb diet does not outperform them. So it's not a magic bullet. That's the part that we want to understand, is because we're talking about fat loss, not just water weight loss. So it's very important, especially when we're talking about women over 40, because of the fact that, remember, we always have to bring it back to the muscle piece of the equation. And we want to look at the overall diet and is it allowing us to hold on to muscle? Forget about, is it allowing us to let the scale go down? Forget about the water weight that we're doing, because remember, water is inside of muscle. It's not fat soluble. So your fat does not have water in it. So losing water is more of of an indicator that you might be losing muscle than that you're losing fat. When you're losing fat, you're not losing water. That has nothing to do with water. So if you are eating in a way that's sacrificing that for the sake of the scale, then things are just going to continue to snowball until you crash and have to either rebuild that muscle or lower the calories or carbs or something again to try to continue seeing those results. And the thing is, I said, eventually it will stop and you'll hit that like ultimate plateau. And that's when things will feel very frustrating you. So are carbs fattening? Short answer, no. They're not inherently fattening. The types of carbs is going to be important there. You want to keep the fiber in, you want to keep the protein in, have more, unprocessed than processed. If you want to keep some processed in and it still fits the bill on the other ones, then you should be fine eating a balanced diet that also includes carbs and fat and protein and eating the right amount of fuel for your body.